Next up, we have Kenyon Green, the guard out of Texas A&M, who all of a sudden just became more of an interesting player to me. As I had watched his film, completed his evaluation a little bit ago, and then all of a sudden, just before the video, I was pulling up some of my notes, and I was researching his age and making sure I had everything down. And all of a sudden, there's a knee issue supposedly that has come out of the woodworks with Kenyon Green that analysts are saying they believe is going to cause him to fall. So I just wanted to address that right away and early, that I do strictly film-based grades, right? I'm not a doctor. I don't have access to the medicals. So even though that would have a bearing on my evaluation, if this was a professional context, for the sake of this, there will be no impact of that knee issue, whatever it may be. I know one of the reports that I read quickly said that it is supposedly more of a down the line issue, which last time I heard that was like Jay Ajayi, where they were saying, oh, his knee's bone on bone, and then he lights it up for a few weeks, hasn't decent little run there with the Dolphins and then the Eagles, and then all of a sudden is out of the league rather quickly. So in that regard, there's definitely some cause for pause if that is the actual state of his knee, but like I said, that's not going to have any bearing on him. And ultimately, his first round grade, as you see here, 82.92. In terms of why I gave him that grade, I thought that, just going through some of my notes here quickly, I thought he was a pretty good mover, which was interesting because he's a big guy. He's 6'4", 225 pounds, right? That's what he was listed as at Texas A&M. Came in at the combine 323 pounds, so really not a huge difference there, but he was an interesting guy where, so many of these guards are very scheme specific, right? They're either these quicker, smaller guys who are great at, accelerating through tiny gaps and, executing those second level blocks and those long range pulls and things of that nature. And then you have other guys that are just these massive maulers and behemoths that operate best in a phone booth when they don't really have to move at all. I thought Kenyon was an interesting mix of a guy that was strong enough to battle in a phone booth and, put up a fight against any nose tackle, one technique, three technique that he faced, but at the same time also quick enough with his feet to execute second level blocks at a rather high level. So not the greatest athlete necessarily, but I thought he played it pretty well, to say the least. I thought, another note that I made was his ability to anchor and his strength was generally good. I know occasionally he would get a little bit top heavy. He has an interesting build in that regard. If you haven't seen him, he doesn't necessarily have like the thickest lower body, which is generally something that you see with these offensive linemen, but he's kind of a little bit top heavy. Doesn't necessarily play like it, but perhaps that's an issue with the knees, right? I don't know. I don't know. That one really snuck out of nowhere on me in regards to his knees. But yeah, he definitely does look a little bit top heavy, which could cause some issues with his balance. That was something that I marked a little bit off. I thought that he had sometimes a bit of a forward lean with his hips kind of detached and uncorked at times, which essentially meant that he was in prime position to get just dumped on his face, right? Not that it always happened by any means, but there are a lot of reps where it was possible. So I took a few points off there in terms of balance and leverage. Just some other notes I made. He had very good and generally forceful punches, although he was missing with his hands quite a bit, particularly his left hand. I noticed it in one of the games he was playing at left tackle. It was the Alabama game, where he was just overshooting with his left every time. And, that is a strategy that some people will purposely employ when they're on the inside. So say if you're a right guard and you are facing Aaron Donald as a 3 technique, right? So he's in your right gap. If you're worried about him crossing your face and beating you to your inside, right? So going across towards your left hand, maybe while you're punching that right hand up and under into his chest, you're going to toss that left hand out there almost as like a hook or a net, and instead of getting it up and inside his shoulder pads into his breastplate, you're going to kind of wrap it around and place it on the side of his shoulder to try and catch him in case he tries to go inside. And buy yourself some extra time. The problem is at left tackle, where Kenyon was playing at the time, that was about the worst thing that could be done. There's no benefit to missing outside with your outside hand when you're playing the outside edge. That just wasn't ideal. But there was something that I should note: the position that he played, because there is a little bit of discussion about that at least. It was very interesting because the first game I put on was that Alabama game. He was playing left tackle. The second game I put on was the LSU game. He was playing left guard. And the third game I put on was Tennessee, where he was playing right tackle. And then he ultimately went back to left guard for a couple afterwards. But, yeah, very versatile in terms of the way Texas A&M used him. And I thought that was certainly a positive to an extent, right? Obviously, he's not going to play all those positions at the next level. And that's where a lot of my notes come in. I actually wrote some of my most extensive notes for anybody for him, but it was because he was playing so many different positions, and there's so many different things to talk about. Like, so, for example, I thought he lacked the desired foot quickness to be a left tackle. Excuse me, an offensive tackle. I don't know what I was I was getting to my next note already, but yeah, I didn't quite think that he had the foot quickness to cover up some of those outside speed rushers. And then when he would try, he would open up his hips towards the sidelines. He'd get beat back inside. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't necessarily good all the time either. It was passable. If you have an injury and you have Kenyon and your backup guard is better than your backup left tackle, maybe you want to kick him out, give the guard some run for a game until you can get a better solution the week after, right? Like, that's a very real thing. But college, they weren't necessarily doing that. They were just playing them all over the place. So it was interesting because a lot of these notes I don't think are very applicable to what he expects to play at the next level, because I do think he's a guard. I would say almost with complete certainty he's a guard. And, he's shorter like a guard. He looks like a guard. He's 325 pounds like a guard. I thought that he's definitely a guard. And, some of the other notes I have that I suppose do apply were I thought he was occasionally, I wrote this in all caps, occasionally bad reactionary quickness. And what I meant by that were there were a few plays, particularly at right tackle, I remember in the Tennessee game, where he was almost, deer in the headlights when a guy would spike inside of him. That's a situation where he'd want that hook left hand out there, right? That safety net. But he would set outside, and then that guy would just bang it back inside to the B gap, and he would, like, it looked like he froze for a second, like his controller died on him or something, and he had to plug it back in and charge it. Well, in the meantime, the quarterback is scrambling for his life and getting sacked. There were a couple plays like that, but partially what I have to imagine that comes down to is having to know the playbook from so many different spots. And I think that there is a point where that becomes, I don't want to say more harm than good, but you're only in college for so long, so to have to learn it from so many different positions and play them all at the highest of levels in terms of, right there in the SEC, that's just very difficult, and I could kind of personalize this a little bit. There was one stretch where we had some guys get injured, and my coach wanted me to play second string right tackle reps and then first string left guard reps. And the thing that's interesting is, like, you're so used to all these plays at one position, but you kind of have to change your perspective. And whereas instead of one play, when they say 12, I know it's going to the right and I'm kicking out the defensive end. Well, now it's a 12 and I'm the left guard and I have to reach, step the one technique and climb to the linebacker depending on the alignment, right? Like, there's a lot of different stuff that goes into it, and that's a bang bang play that you have to be able to comprehend and know very quickly. Sometimes we would go up to the line and we would have up to 6 plays called, and based on the number the quarterback would say in the cadence, that would be the play we ran. So if you didn't have those answers on speed dial, you were out of the luck. And I wonder if that kind of got Kenyon at times, in terms of he had the play stored in his head from so many different angles, from left tackle to left guard to right tackle. Like, I just wonder if that was part of what the sort of slowing him down process was at times, right? Because, for example, on that same play where he got beat inside like a deer in the headlights, if he was at left guard, perhaps that's what they would have wanted. You'd want that guy to cross outside and go to the opposite B gap away from the quarterback, right? Maybe that would be the desired outcome. So you kind of want to let him go outside in that regard. You want him to cross back to that edge rather than the one inside, right? Like it's interesting because you can kind of see where it's a negative, but maybe it's not as much of a negative as it might appear. So in that regard, I gave him a 7.25 out of 10 on his IQ and awareness, which you could argue it should be lower based on some of the plays that you see. But like I said, I feel pretty confident saying that once you put him at one spot and he learns one spot and he knows one spot, I think that some of those just rough issues will go away. Just some of these other grades very quickly. I gave him an 8.5 out of 10 on physicality and finishing. Just did a really good job blocking through the whistle, I would say, regardless of where he was at. And I think that's a large part of what made him so successful at each position in terms of the execution, right? Like, if you just have a guy that is going to go for longer and harder than you on every single play until the referee blows the whistle, then that guy's probably going to win more reps than you are. And that guy was oftentimes Kenyon Green. By and large, that was pretty much it. I gave him a 3.25 out of 5 on size and a 3.25 out of 5 on athleticism, which you could argue the size should be higher, the athleticism lower, but like I said, those are just general intangible and size-based grades, more so off the combine than anything else. So all in all, that comes out to an 82.92 at guard, which does put him in the first round. And I've mentioned this in previous videos, but I don't currently have a ton of first-round grades necessarily. So, you know, even though he is towards the end of my quote-unquote first-round grades here, my cutoff for the second round is 82.5 and under. So he's close, but if there's only 14 guys ahead of him, then that tells you, I think, what what my ultimate opinion on Kenyon Green is. And in that regard, I definitely wouldn't have a problem if a team took him, mid to late first round. I think that's definitely a good spot for him. And what I like is that, like I said, I think he could fit with any scheme. He would probably be a little bit better on the ones that want to attack downhill and really pound the ball inside, but I thought he showed enough mobility to where if you were a team that wanted to get out and run, you could maybe have him drop a little bit of weight and just work with some of the already athletic intangibles that he had, and then you could have him be successful there, right? So I wouldn't be shocked if he's a guy that was on a lot of teams' boards, in the sights of a lot of teams, regardless of this knee issue or not. We'll have to see how that affects him, but that's all I have for you guys today. So hopefully you enjoy it, and hopefully I will see you next video. Peace, guys. Whoa. You guys thought the video was done there? Yeah, me too. But I just realized that I messed up, and I didn't want to go back and re-record it all. You probably realized if you heard me say an 82.9 number that wasn't what was on the screen, and that was a mistake. I was reading off the wrong thing. I accidentally gave Kenyon Green the center position premium, which is 3% of an added bonus for being a center rather than the 2.5% premium that I give to guards. So that's why on the cell that I was looking at, it had 82.9 rather than 82.5. So instead, that puts him as the currently 16th highest player on my big board, which, like I said, sort of that mid to late first round range. Depending on that knee, who knows? But I just want to clear that up so there was no confusion, because I'm sure I mentioned that number a few times despite the screen saying otherwise. So now I'll let you guys go. Apologies yet again for that. See you in the next video.